Everyone is a product of everything that happened to them. And there is no leaving behind and there is no forgetting. You get to grow up with your childhood anchored to your back the rest of your life. And so there's no shame in talking about anything bad that happens, because the goal is not to leave it behind. The goal is to move forward. So a little bit about my background. I am not a clinical psychologist. I'm actually a developmental psychologist. But over the years, a lot of my research has started to focus on influences of early adversity on the brain and on sexual and gender identity development. We're coming to see that what we used to think of as being damage or deficit, we now are saying, oh no, that's just an adaptive response to something hard that happened. Adversity is such a normative human experience. People have been abusing one another as long as people have been on the planet. So you are not part of a small group of people. You are part of a very large group of people. Most folks don't talk about it, but you're not so alone and you're not so different. I love thinking about our ancestors. They always reassure me. You know, this is what life was like. Everyone was stressed out. They were gathering food. They were roaming around. Nuclear family didn't exist. There was what is called allo-parenting, where there'd be a whole community. And the group loyalty and the group connection was the key to survival. And also, humans lived in really widely varying environments with different levels of danger. There was a lot of hardship. There was a lot of death, loss, illness, violence. None of that is modern. And so life was both dangerous, A, really dangerous, B, there was lots of actual trauma, lots of death, lots of waking up next to your dead sibling. There was trauma everywhere. And number 3, everything depended on your membership in the group. Without the group, you were nothing. Without the group, you would die. And so we have brains that are prepared in certain ways, where we expect hardship. Our brain is wired to expect it because that's the kind of environment we lived in. We are threat sensitive. We are rejection sensitive because we inherited a brain that said, no matter what you do not do anything that makes the group push you away or that makes them find you disgusting, because that's abandonment, and abandonment is death. So we evolved to have a lot of hardship, a lot of threat, and to need other people. And so when you have a traumatic event that involves something shameful, that is an emergency for your brain like nothing else. And it will do wacky things to get you out of that fearful state. Those are adaptations, right? So when you are affected by things that happen to you sexually as a child, we often think, oh, there's a gradation. We have this idea that the sexual mistreatment that is more serious are those that somehow seem more serious or seem more invasive, or, there's actual legal categories about different types of maltreatment. And it's so crazy, right? Because 90% in terms of the psychological effects is the fear that begins the moment you perceive that something is happening that you don't understand and that is scaring you. The fear is what changes our brain more so than a mark. And humans will do a lot of things to avoid fear. And, the adaptation that you develop, how you're going to handle your terror, that is going to influence your brain, because the brain is just so vulnerable to change all through development. It's born basically unfinished, and it signals from the outside environment, like how much fear is out there. Our evolved nervous system says the frequency of that experience of threat is a cue as to you're in a dangerous world. By the time you hit puberty, you might be dead. So it speeds up physical maturation. Kids exposed to sexual trauma often reach puberty earlier, and it amplifies often impulsive behavior. It changes your threshold of endocrine activation to stress. It changes your metabolism. It changes your maturational timing. Those don't have to do with your conscious narrative of what happened and why it happened. That's your body saying, there is fear here. There's fear around me. And so regardless of how you interpret the experience now, we evolved to have nervous systems that say to the brain, if social rejection and violence is a possibility, then we need to shift to plan B as soon as possible. And that can have a whole bunch of effects that seem like trauma responses, but they are adaptations that your brain trying to get you through, and all for one goal, surviving. One of the things to always remember is that evolution is always about trade-offs. There are downsides and there are upsides. You are not damaged. You also have some unique things that make you different. We know that one of the effects of early adversity is deeper empathy, is sort of a more openness and a more sensitivity to the emotions of others. You've been made more empathic. That is a gift. All of your emotional tentacles are extra sensitive, and that is something that can be a real gift. Ability to anticipate. One of the adaptations is kind of forethinking, and it goes along with that emotional sensitivity. What's going to happen? What's going to happen? What are all the things that could happen? That ability to read, to calculate, that's a trauma-adapted skill. Creativity, it's a part of that opening of possibilities. There is a differential sensitivity to the world. Attention shifting, that's another skill that kids exposed to trauma have to develop, is how to track multiple things at once, shift attention very quickly. And the other thing that we have found that I think is the most hopeful at all is that it appears that trauma-exposed kids, when they have future adversities as an adult, their brains show better flexibility and ability to adjust. So the adversity that you experience makes you more adaptable. It makes you more resilient. And so you can love all of yourself right now, 1000%, and really forgive yourself for how hard you probably are on yourself about how those adaptations show up in your life. But give yourself some love. And remember, if you are here, if you are listening to the sound of my voice, from a perspective of evolution, that was a fantastic success. Whatever it took to get you here, you won, right? No matter what damage you had to do to yourself in the process, you're alive. Your adaptations worked. So whatever you are right now, even if you don't do any more healing for the rest of your life, you're a freaking success story. You survived. You survived. And that is all any of us can hope for.